Namaste and welcome everyone to today's webinar on the yoga of the Mahabharata with Sri Ragu Anantanarayanan and special guest president of HUA, Kalan Vishwanathan. And so in today's webinar, we're just going to get into an overview of the yoga of the Mahabharata. We're going to preview the course of the same name. I'm not going to go into all the details. You may have already seen it. But let me just introduce Raguji, as he is an impressive, wonderful person that we are glad to have as HUA faculty. He actually attained his postgraduate degree in biomedical engineering from IIT Chennai. He was trained as a yoga expert and teacher with some very respected and leaders in the whole field, including Krishnamacharya and Sri TKV Desikachar. So he started many initiatives and businesses and applied Dharma in very interesting ways. He's written books. With that brief introduction, I'm going to hand it to Kalyanji, who will go a little bit further with it. Thank you for joining in today's webinar.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Namaskar. Raguji, namaskar. And sorry for the little confusion here about the panelist link versus the audience. Like, I know you are waiting for us as a member of the audience, and I kept looking for your name as Ragu and I couldn't find you there. So sorry about that. But anyways, all is well. We are here. And again, my apologies to the audience that kind of got off to a little bit of a rough start here today. In any case, welcome, Raguji. It's been a while since you and I had a chance to converse together. Now, I'd like to begin by maybe, asking a question of you. The course that you are teaching is titled Yoga of the Mahabharata. Yoga of the Mahabharata. Now, that's a very unique and interesting title because, one can associate yoga with the Bhagavad Gita, for example, or yoga with the Yoga Sutras and so on. But the yoga of the Mahabharata is a very unique and very distinctive title. Can you explain to our viewers, our audience, how you came to that title, and what it means from your perspective?
Interesting question, Kalyan. I'm glad to be here. Finally, was caught. When you call up people, you get caught in what's called that. It used to be called the telephone prison or some telephone jail or something like that. I was in this web jail for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Clicking all over the place, but finally I'm here, and that's nice. Yeah. See, one of the things that people don't realize is that one of the first texts to discuss yoga, specifically Ayurveda and Sankhya, is the Mahabharata. Right? Though there is a Yoga Vasishtam in the Ramayana, there are detailed discussions about these three in the Mahabharata. And from my understanding, the most critical part, while most people keep talking about the Bhagavad Gita, there are a number of Gitas that are talked about in the Mahabharata, as you know. There is a Vyadha Gita, and then there is a Uddhava Gita. There are many of these things. Now, each of them exemplifies yoga from a different context, but the message is essentially the same. Yeah, so that is one reason where it becomes an appropriate thing. The second is, in all my learning with Krishnamacharya, he would constantly exemplify ideas from the Yoga Sutra by speaking about the behaviors or the contextual issues in the Mahabharata mostly, and sometimes the Ramayana.
Hmm.
So he, in a sense, I mean, he clearly saw the understanding of yoga cannot be derived just by studying the Yoga Sutra, because there is a practice in the Yoga Sutra, right? And unless you have a teacher, you can't understand the practice. To illustrate the practice, you need stories. Yeah. So all the teaching that he did was by using these three things, right? One is to talk about the Yoga Sutras, what the meaning of the Yoga Sutras is, illustrate the meaning and the importance of some of the ideas in the Yoga Sutra through Mahabharata stories, and then prescribe practices as part of the sadhana. And unless I do the practice, I'm not actually ready for the next idea. So this is the Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasitavyam, that way of teaching, which was employed.
Okay. Okay. Now, obviously the connection between theory and practice, theory as exemplified in the, say, the text like the Patanjali Yoga Sutra text, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the practice of yoga as enunciated or as demonstrated by a teacher like Krishnamacharya, for example, who's the father of modern yoga. The modern revival of yoga can all be traced back to Krishnamacharya mostly.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? And that connection is more easy to make than, say, the connection with the Mahabharata. And let me explain why from my
Yeah.
side. Okay.
Yeah.
See, the Mahabharata is a story of, obviously it's an epic story, and it deals with a vast range of characters who are participating in an epic struggle for political control over a kingdom. And it's got a lot of drama and a lot of lot of incidents and events. It's an epic story. Whereas if you look at Ashtanga Yoga as exemplified by Patanjali, simplistically, it's more of a discipline of inwardness, right? The practice of inwardness. You start with yama niyama, asana, pranayama, and then you go into pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, and so on. And that inward, the discipline of inwardness and the practice of inwardness or interiority, going within oneself, right? That would seem to be somewhat at variance with the drama of the Mahabharata.
Yeah, I understand.
So,
I understand what you're saying.
So I would like you to now explain the connection.
Yeah, let me take a shot at this. See, I'm just going to respond to your question, Kalyan, because I haven't looked at the difficulty. I've taken it for granted.
Yeah.
Because that's the way I've learned it, right? So one of the things Krishnamacharya would say is that you can't differentiate the Vyasa who wrote the Mahabharata from the Vyasa who wrote the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra Bhashya. Okay, in his mind, it's the same Vyasa. Okay. Now, one of the ways of looking at it is to say that once you reach that consciousness, Vyasa is not necessarily the name of a person. Yeah. So I'm just taking this for granted. That for me, what Krishnamacharya said is it's the same Vyasa, and that's it for me. I don't have to go further than that. Now, if you look at the structure of the Mahabharata, while it's a huge story, how does it start? It starts with Brahma coming and telling Vyasa there is a fall in the way people are understanding Dharma. So can you write a story which is full of rasa, which is full of human contexts, where you can illustrate dharma. That's the design criteria, if you want to call it that, right? And then, if you go into Tamil traditions of the performance, village performances of the Mahabharata, the first thing that is enacted over an 18-day period is the Bakasura Vatam. Yeah, that's the story of the time when the brothers and Kunti are in the forest. Yeah, after the lac, the palace of lac has been burnt down and so on. I'm hoping most people know the story. And then they come to this place called Ekachakra Grama, and there is this whole thing of a person being sacrificed to Bakasura. So she's living in the home of the Brahmin family whose son is going to be sacrificed. Yeah, the brothers have gone away somewhere. Kunti is just going to enter that home and ask for a little bit of water or some such thing. And then she hears a discussion going on inside. And the structure of the discussion is fantastic. Yeah, the father is saying, this is the unfortunate situation we're in. This is how a dharmic father, dharmic husband would behave. This is how an adharmic father and an adharmic husband would behave. I'm just a human being. These are my difficulties. What do I do? Right? Then the mother repeats the same thing. She will say, this is how a dharmic mother ought to do, behave in this thing. Adharma, I'm just a human being. What do I do? Then the elder daughter repeats the same thing. This is the dharmic daughter, adharmic daughter, and I'm a human being. And then the little boy repeats the same thing, very poignantly. So then Kunti enters and says, don't worry, I have a son who can give a heroic response to this situation, that is Bhima, and promises that Bhima will be able to deal with Bakasura. Now, if you look at the structure of the Mahabharata, you'll find this dialogue happening in different ways, sometimes directly, sometimes implicitly, over and over and over and over again. Right? Now, Dhritarashtra will stand there and say, I'm just a human being. On the one side, you'll have Vidura, who talks about the dharmic, Duryodhana, who will talk about the adharmic, and there is no heroic person in that Kaurava group. So there is no movement into the heroic action. And how does the movement from being a human being to a heroic action happen? Through the Pandavas going through yogic sadhana. Yeah, so every time they come to a level of maturity, encounter the world and find that their maturity is not good enough, like the famous gambling scene, they go back into a retreat, go into yoga sadhana. Yeah, and in those parts of the Mahabharata, the yoga sadhana is very clearly defined. They'll be meeting one sage or the other. He will say, do this practice. Somebody else will offer some other practice. Through those practices, they achieve divine weapons, which can be seen as one's own maturity into greater capability. And remember, they finally have to go through a whole process of Ajñatavasa, which means visiting what in Jungian terms would be considered the deepest shadows of the self. And then they become capable of handling their weapons in a dharmic way. So the entire story of the Mahabharata is actually showing human beings different situations and possibilities where you get into a dharma sankata. And when human beings get into a dharma sankata, obviously I'm not capable of heroic action. Can I recognize this and practice yoga sadhana so that I can have a more heroic response each time? That's the way I grow. So in that sense, the whole of the Mahabharata is a story of yoga.
I see. I see. Okay, this is very interesting, right? I mean, in a sense, right? What you pointed out, the dharma and adharma dichotomy, and the constant illustration of that dichotomy throughout the Mahabharata
Mm.
is actually very, very intelligible. It's easier to comprehend and
Yeah.
understand, right? And what is perhaps a little more obscure is the yoga that is involved, the connection between yoga and dharma, which you are making right now. What you're making is the connection you are making is in order to move decisively towards dharma,
Mm.
towards dharmic action. In
Mm.
fact, you're using the word heroic dharmic action, essentially
Correct.
speaking, right? So you're saying for a person to move towards heroic dharmic action, given the configuration of circumstances, challenges, the pros and cons, the ambiguous circumstances with which human beings are constantly confronted with, right? To make that move towards heroic dharmic action, yoga is
It's
absolutely
absolutely essential.
paramount.
Yeah,
Okay,
it is.
yeah,
It is.
that's a very interesting angle on yoga. Okay, I mean
Okay.
it leads to karma yoga naturally
It
in the
is.
Bhagavad
Yeah,
Gita,
it is.
right?
Except that Krishnamacharya wouldn't separate karma yoga, jnana yoga, and all that. He would say that all of them are just different aspects of the same thing. See, let me just illustrate another critical thing that is not often well understood in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra itself.
Mm.
Yeah, that while on the one hand, we look at asana, pranayama, yama, niyama as bahiranga, it is not necessarily only bahiranga. When you start understanding it better, yama and niyama especially become very, very critical for swadhyaya. Yeah, so the way Krishnamacharya would interpret it is something like this. You take ahimsa. Yeah, so in the Mahabharata, hundreds of times, there'll be a discussion and you'll say ahimsa paramo dharmaha. Right? So then what happens in different circumstances, let's say the Pandavas, we'll take the Pandavas now, they will behave in ways that don't conform to a very high standard of ahimsa. Ahimsa is not just the external action, but the internal intent also. Every time they do that, they own up to the fact that they have crossed a limit and do some work with themselves. So this would be an illustration for him to say, look at, let's say there are two sutras he would look at here. One is the Yama, the sutra that talk about ahimsa and so on. The other one is Maitri. There's a sutra that talks about Maitri, Karuna, what's your attitude towards people? He would say, look at this carefully and watch yourself and see when you cross the limits, either by allowing himsa to happen to you or by you crossing the limits and aggressing upon the other. That becomes the starting point for self-reflection and swadhyaya. These stories help you, inspire you to stay on this path of swadhyaya. Yeah? On the one hand, it says, you know what, even the Pandavas screwed up once in a while. So you can also screw up. But if you want to be a Pandava and not be a Kaurava, get into a self-reflective process. So swadhyaya depends upon my sensitivity in understanding yama. And yama is completely placed in social contexts. It's not divorced from the social context at all. Yeah, because at every moment, I experience a context where satya, ahimsa, and all that are called upon.
Okay, very good. So now in your course, the yoga of the Mahabharata, to share with us, with the audience, how you are essentially accessing the realm of yoga through the Mahabharata, because it is clearly this is a very uniquely distinct access to yoga, it is, because if when you especially in a Western context, yoga becomes quite simply asana, mostly, right?
That's the problem, Kalyan.
Mostly, yeah,
That's
mostly.
the problem.
So that's the normal kind of now popular window through which yoga is being accessed today, asana, right?
Correct.
Now you're pointing to yama and niyama. There is the two earlier stages before asana and pranayama as the sort of the foundations of yoga, and you are especially penetrating yama and niyama through the stories, through the Mahabharata itself, which is a very unique sort of door or window of access into the world of yoga. Okay. Very unique, very different. Not at all common, I would say.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So therefore, please now explain to the audience how you're unfolding yoga through the Mahabharata.
Yeah. Okay. See, I'm going to the way I'm doing it now, the practical aspect of it is something quite simple, Kalyan. What I'm doing is we are curating a set of stories. Yeah. Let's say stories that have to do with Yudhishthira. And if you understand the Mahabharata structure carefully, each of these is not just a human being out there who lived 5,000 years ago. They're aspects of us. Yes, so there are 5 critical aspects of us which are being looked at as the Pandavas. Now, you can look at it from a psychological point of view and say, do these 5, cover the entire range and all that? That's not an important question, because we're not trying to describe behavior here. We're trying to help people to introspect. So this 5 is a very interesting number because we see it getting repeated in many ways in the Indian context, including in dance, including in the ways of Shringara, everything. This 5 gets repeated because it's wide enough for you to look at nuances and small enough to remember. 3 is too small, 8 is too large, kind of a thing. And if you look at combinations, which is what we are, I'm not a pure Yudhishthira or a pure this or a pure that. So I'm a combination of these, right? So if you just look at these 5 and then say, am I a very high identification with it, medium, low, you get 5 into 3, whatever combinations now, which is almost 1 million combinations, possibilities of human persona. So it's a beautiful framework. Now, when you read a story, you don't read the story of Yudhishthira out there somewhere. You read the story by putting yourself there and say, I am Yudhishthira, I'm faced with this context. What is getting evoked in me? And the Mahabharata is so beautifully structured. You have always the counterpoint also coming up in the stories. Like, for example, the counterpoint of Yudhishthira is Bhishma. Okay, in a very quick thing. Now, both of them are very strongly based on, Vachan, I've given my word, I've done this. Yeah, very highly responsible people and so on. Where does the difference come? Yeah, every time Yudhishthira uses this role commitment to act in himsa, he goes back and questions that whole assumption set and comes back with a better understanding of how to contextually apply ahimsa. Whereas Bhishma simply sticks with one idea which he had when he was 16, 17 and gave up his manliness for whatever reason and simply refuses to ever relook at it. Right? So you have this peculiar situation. Nah? In his deathbed, he sits there, and when he's talking about dharma, he talks about how a dharmic person should look after women. Yeah, Draupadi is listening to it, and she's quite angry and says, what the hell were you doing? So he says something which is actually a very critical thing in the yogic practice. He says, I was in Duryodhana's home, influenced by that context and eating his food. So my mind was completely clouded. Yeah, I just want to take this to illustrate the importance of yoga. Now, when Krishnamacharya talks about yoga, he will continuously talk about food. He'll say, unless you eat the right food, you won't have the stamina to look at yourself honestly and do swadhyaya. So you start with food, right? Your sadhana has to include health, because if you don't have a healthy body, if you don't have the ability to quieten yourself with pranayama, reflecting on yourself becomes very difficult. Your body will start agitating and you'll run away from the observation. So he would relate all this back to saying, so what are the fundamental tenets of the sadhana? Good food, asana practice, pranayama practice. And when you're doing asana and pranayama, if you start understanding a reflective way of doing it, you know where you're holding the tensions, because the tensions are held in the body. So being able to understand that and examine it becomes very important. And when you start going into the body, and that's where the samskaras and vasanas are stored, if you really understand how to do it, then the places where you got traumatized and held your body in a certain way start getting revealed to you. Then the next context, your body will not tighten up, your mind will not close up, and you'll be able to see clearly and act, let's say ahimsa or satya, you'll be able to act from there. So that's the connection between the asana practice and this. Now, in the course, we obviously can't teach you the asana and the pranayama. We assume that people are doing this, but we'll help people to be reflective through the stories and ask themselves, what's the Yudhishthira in me? What's the Bhishma in me? When do these personas in me play out? And through that, I get an understanding of myself. So we start with Yudhishthira, but we'll quickly leave him behind and say, how am I Yudhishthira? Leave that also behind and ask myself, where does my rigidity, for example, come from? Or if I'm examining Bhishma, if I'm examining Bhima and Duryodhana, where does my impulsivity come from? Am I truly brave, or am I just, all a coward inside pretending to be a great guy, which is what Duryodhana is doing most of the time. So you can really look at and understand yourself. And this understanding is very critical, whether you're a husband, like I told you in the beginning, what is the dharmic husband? What's a dharmic leader? This applies in any context. The role and the contextual situation and the status you're in is a secondary thing. The primary thing is, where am I coming from? Who am I? How do I perceive reality? Why am I doing the things I'm doing? This is what it helps you look at, and this is Swadhyaya. This is the core of Antaranga Yoga. Yeah.
So essentially, what you are doing seems to that you're using the characters of the Mahabharata, the circumstances of the Mahabharata, the situations that are contained in the Mahabharata as a kind of archetypal characters, archetypal situations, abstract situations, right?
I wouldn't call it abstract, Kalyan. I would agree with the word archetypal, but I wouldn't say abstract.
Okay.
Archetypal is inside me. It's not abstract.
Right.
It's acting through.
Right. And you're asking the participants now, the participants in your course, to actually see themselves refracted through these archetypes, or reflected in these archetypes.
Absolutely. Yeah, so each, yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. Each is a successive mirror. Reading the story out there is the first mirror. Asking myself, how am I like Yudhishthira is the second mirror. Discovering the Yudhishthira persona in me is the third. And then going into the roots of it is the fourth. Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a kind of almost, you can say, a psychological self-exploration,
Yes,
facilitated through the
absolutely. Absolutely.
sequences of the Mahabharata.
Absolutely. I would go to the root meaning of the word psychology, psyche, logic, understanding the logic of my psyche. I'm calling this Chitta Vidya. Not Chit Vidya or whatever. Chitta Vidya is the focus of this. The Western psychology gets into describing behavior from the outside. This is a route to introspection, deep introspection.
Yeah. So now let me ask a different question here for you, right? What do you expect, or what do you anticipate would be the benefits and value that someone might derive from going through this course, going through this type of exploration that you are facilitating in this course?
See, the primary thing is this, Kalyan, in my understanding, if I have to perform in any situation, yeah, there are three questions I have to answer very accurately. Who am I? Where am I? And why am I here? Yeah. So the more accurately I answer these questions, the more impactful I will be, the more powerful I'll be, and the more dharmic I will be in every situation. Yeah. But these three are not easy questions to answer. Right? This who am I question, we often get caught with descriptions other people have given us, with who we wish to be, and so on. So through an introspection of these stories, one can start understanding how to look at myself and have a sense of who am I in any given context. Yeah. And this is going to keep changing. It's not a fixed answer. So I have to have the sensitivity to be reflective enough to know who am I. The second is to be able to look at the situation from a certain quietude inside me. See, if my approach to a situation already has an attitude of the body and of the mind, I will never look at the situation for what it is. I will tend to look at it from a bias. Is this going to hurt me? Is this an opportunity? Is this this? Is it that? If I do that, I actually limit, and this has been studied neurologically also. The moment I go away from a quietude inside, my brain and my entire sensory things start getting tunneled. And I only look for certain things. Whereas being able to understand how to stay with a quietude allows me to answer the question, where am I? Very, very clearly. Right? If I've answered who am I and where am I, then why I'm here becomes easier to answer. So in a situation, the more I'm able to do this, the more powerful, the more appropriate I'll be. Right? And then I have to do the same thing that the Pandavas do. Yeah. I have to ask two more questions. While I'm in the context, I have to act. I can't be sitting there and saying, wait, I have to find out who I am. Nobody's going to give you that. Nah? You have to gamble. You're gambling. You're screwing up. Right? You answered the questions before. Nah? I'm a king. Somebody has asked me to gamble. I must gamble. You gave some reasons and obfuscated the fact that you loved gambling. So then you sit back and you say, hey, I think I screwed up.
We lose him. think I'm afraid we lost him a little bit.
Okay, just a little internet connection. Glad. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Am I back?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
connection-
you're back. You're back.
Yeah, I was saying that when I'm acting, right, just as I have to do this thing before,
Mm.
yeah, when I'm acting, I have to do whatever I can. As prepared as I am, I have to go into it and act. But I have to be able to come out of it and ask the question, who was I when I was acting?
Mhm.
Was I truly a dharmic king, or was I just a gambler who got caught with my own excitement? And be honest about it, right? So this reflection helps me understand where I was coming from, and you go through this cycle. Now, when you go through this cycle, you will become the best that you can be. If you can understand how to go through this cycle, you will become the best that you can be. I've learned this from America, Kalyan, to give money back guarantees. No? You come, you learn this process
Mhm.
of asking these questions,
Mhm.
yeah, and you will become the best that you can be.
Yeah.
So that's the benefit. The benefit
Yeah.
is you will become the best that you can be.
Okay, now that's an interesting way of saying things, right? I mean, being the best, becoming the best that you can be, which is to say, doing the right thing given the circumstances, making the right choices. But I want to connect it back to something you started with earlier in this webinar, right? You spoke of heroic action,
That's right.
Yeah. Now, the ordinary human beings, ordinarily, we're not really seeking to perform heroic actions. We just want to survive, make it through life, and have maximize our comforts and conveniences, and we leave heroism to some other person, remote person, who we wish and hope will be truly heroic on our behalf, right? In other words, we tend to transfer the responsibility for heroism to other people, and not really engage in a conversation around what is not just the right thing to do, what is the most heroic thing to do under the circumstances, right? I mean, I know it's an abstraction here, but can you speak a little bit about doing the right thing, being the best you can be, and heroic action, which is a connection which is probably very important?
See, there are two responses to this, Kalyan.
Mm.
Okay. One response is that if you really enter yoga, no, the first sutra says Atha Yoga Anushasana.
Yeah.
That Atha is really a question. The question is, are you prepared to enter a sadhana? And are you prepared to continuously work on becoming a better version of yourself every day?
Right.
That's the Atha question. I'm assuming that when somebody says they want to enter any yogic pursuit, that there is some commitment in them to become the best that they can be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm calling the best I can be my heroic self. You don't have to compare it with somebody else, right? So, Bhima doesn't have to be Dara Singh, no? I can be Bhima. I may not be that big guy, but whenever I act from courage and as courageously enter a situation as I can, I'm being the best that I can be in that situation.
Right.
And if I learn how to introspect, I can be a little more courageous next time, a little better, not allow myself to get carried away, not become impulsive, and so on. Yeah, and this is something which everybody needs to do. Now, every time you need to go and talk to your manager, for example. Unless I'm able to ask the question, who am I, where am I, why am I here? I'll go into that situation unprepared. Yeah, let's say there's a situation at home, right? If I'm not reflecting on these questions, I'm just going to be reacting to what's going on, rather than have a measured and authentic response to the situation. So heroism here does not necessarily mean comparing myself to some other person. In fact, in yoga, you don't compare.
Yeah.
You just look at the next unfolding possibility within you.
Mm.
You keep walking in that space. Now, yoga, actually,
Right.
one of the meanings of the word yoga is yogat yoga uchite. I achieve something, I discover there's a next possibility, work on that, achieve that, next one, next one. And the Mahabharata actually flows like that, no?
Yeah.
It's
So
not that these
let me,
five guys are heroes when they're born. Nah? They goof up, they go back, they practice. I mean, there's stories about how much Arjuna practiced, for example.
So let me,
So-
one gentleman in the audience is saying, please give me a concrete illustration. I don't understand what we are talking about and so on.
I thought every illustration I gave was concrete, Kalyan. How to be a
But
good father, how to be a good
let me,
son. Yeah,
let me provide a concrete illustration. Okay?
sure.
So, I'll introspect a little bit on myself. I am the president of Hindu University of America, and I have been the president for 5 years now. Okay, and in one sense, the commitment to be the president and build this institution involves, for me, raising money for the institution. Okay, and raising money is incredibly hard with the Hindu community. I mean, Hindu community is one of the richest communities in America.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
but they don't give easily, and they don't give for Hindu causes. Okay, and
absolutely.
so the consequence on me personally is I frequently get frustrated. I get frustrated. I ask for money, and people don't give, and they beat around the bush, and I get personally frustrated, and it becomes a kind of a yoga for me to try to regain my composure, and I mean, I can't tell you how often I feel like I should just simply quit, get out of this predicament I have placed myself in. And I frequently feel like, I am like that character Abhimanyu, who walked into the Chakravyuha, who knew how to get in, but doesn't know how to get out, you know. And ultimately, this university will consume me in some way.
Yes.
Understand? Because of the immense resistance in the domain of fundraising that I keep facing on a daily, everyday basis.
I can understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And, and I don't think, in some ways, this because of the resistance of amongst the attitudes of the really wealthy Hindus who can easily give away millions of dollars because they have so much, but they don't. And that creates turns this simple task of creating and sustaining a Hindu University of America, into a Himalayan struggle for me. Himalayan struggle, okay?
I can understand.
And my most frequent reaction is, okay, when am I going to give up on this? Okay, so I presented a case study for you.
Beautiful.
Now you can now analyze
Let me walk you through this. Yeah. So if you came to me on this, first thing I would do is to say, great. Yeah. The commitment that you brought in, while you're calling it the Abhimanyu situation, this kind of commitment that says, I will not give up what I have spoken about and promised to do is a Yudhishthira part of you. Yeah, high sense of responsibility, high sense of commitment, right? And this commitment is unto the promise you have made to yourself. It's not a commitment unto somebody else, right? Now, the second thing you're talking about, the frustration, I would advise some simple pranayama, asana seriously, Kalyan. Every morning, I would advise, something simple for you to get back into a context within yourself. Every night, I would ask you while you're going to bed, this is a very simple yoga nidra thing. Go back on your day in reverse. And whatever bharam na solvangala Tamil, any burden that you feel, depending on how if you want to do it in a dramatic way, actually take the bharam, keep a figure of your Ishta Devata next to you, right? Offer it to her or him, go to sleep.
Mm.
Because sleeping well is very critical in your context.
Yeah.
And I would ask you to be very careful about food, because when you're frustrated, you tend to eat too much. Then I would sit with you and help you to look at what are your resources to deal with your frustration.
Right.
Yeah, maybe there's a Nakula, strong Nakula in you. Maybe there's a strong Bhima in you. Right? So we would explore that so that you don't get caught with just a Bhishma-like commitment without bringing in other possibilities. Right? Then I would ask you to do something which is actually the first story in the Mahabharata, which is the Samudra Manthan. I would say, let's go and sit in the shoes of this rich Indian American. Right? Who is he? So if I'm this rich Indian American, who am I? Yeah, maybe I'm holding on to where I came from. Yeah, like for example, in my family, my great-grandfather endured penury. So that story, those stories are hanging around in our family. I find myself, for example, every now and again, getting afraid of the kind of scenes that have been presented, of how he suffered, how my grandfather studied under a lamplight, right? So all of these stories are there. And maybe for me to open my heart out and say, I'm going to invest in something with no personal return, takes a lot from me. Yeah. So can I be compassionate to this person? Yeah. Maybe that will help me. It may or may not help him, but it will help me not get so frustrated and say, okay, be compassionate.
Yeah.
This guy might have X amount of money, but it takes a big heart to
to
get out of these kind of deep traumatic memories, and then transcend it.
Yeah.
Right? I might give to building a temple, Kalyan.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what I find in a lot of Indians. Now, I might give to a temple, but to invest in this extremely important knowledge creating process, I find people hesitating. I don't know why.
Yeah. So good.
So we
Great.
need to understand this larger context also. So all of this to me is within the scope of Mahabharata. Nothing that I've spoken to you so far is outside the frame of understanding the Mahabharata.
Right. So, anyways, so what Raguji is teaching me is elements of what you might call the yoga of fundraising. Yoga of fundraising.
Dharma, artha, kama, moksham. Yeah, artha is part of dharma, of course.
Right. So, anyways, I just want to share with the listeners here. Okay, this was just an example. And I didn't come to this webinar today intending to share this personal situation with Raguji or with the audience at all. Okay, you can believe that I had no intention of sharing something about myself in this webinar, but I did it because it was a very living, real, personal example that I'm living with kind of every day now. Every day I'm living with it right now. Okay, so in this sense, right, the course, the value of the course, I believe, is in the students being able to reflect about their own lives, their own commitments, their own challenges, where they are truly heroic in their lives. For example, I do think the commitment to launch and run successfully a Hindu University of America is a pretty heroic commitment.
Absolutely.
I do believe that.
Absolutely.
but it flips on the flip side, it comes with this constant pressure and frustration to meet my numbers every year after year, deal with board members, deal with the environment. And, the psychologically is sometimes it is easier to simply quit the whole Kurukshetra and walk away from it.
Hey, Kalyan, you cannot, because you have already defined it as a Dharma Kshetra.
Yeah,
No, this is very what you said just now, Kalyan, as a passing joke is extremely important.
Right.
In your mind, it's not a Kurukshetra, it's a Dharma Kshetra. That's why you can stay with it.
Right.
If you treated it as a Kurukshetra, it's very easy to get frustrated and say, why the hell am I doing it?
Yeah.
But you're offering yourself to a much greater meaning than Kalyan Vishwanathan.
Yeah, right.
So you've converted it into a Dharma Kshetra, Kalyan.
Dharma Kshetra, correct. Absolutely.
That's why it's a yoga. See, that's why it's a yoga. Otherwise, it's not a yoga.
Right. No, I think in some ways, right? I think, this, what we just shared the last few minutes is an illustration of how the course works, right? How the
Absolutely.
yoga of the Mahabharata works, which is, to take the situations, the stories, the Dharma Shankata, the context of the Mahabharata, and use it as a mirror in which we can see ourselves, our own lives, and our own challenges, our predicaments. And it is really for students who want to be heroic in their lives, right?
Absolutely.
They want to participate in their lives and contribute something and enrich themselves, not financially, but in terms of dharma.
Maybe financially also, Kalyan. We don't
financially
know.
also, maybe, yeah, and also to contribute something of value to society around us, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
and that is the value of this course in as I'm understanding it now, and it really requires at least students to be heroic enough to share their personal life stories and their circumstances and be open and engage with the Mahabharata in a unique and distinct way, so as to unfold the yoga of the Mahabharata in their own lives. Okay. I think we're at the top of the hour. Ankur, can you throw up the poll, please? And I would like to invite people who are in the audience to respond to the poll, and then we'll take a few questions from the Q&A box. Okay. Let me call out a couple of questions, Raguji, for you to answer. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me see.
So the poll is up, and in the chat is a link to the course details as well. It's going to be at this time every Saturday. Any questions in there, Kalyan, that are particularly interesting?
So there's one question here. Does one have to know the entire Mahabharata before attending the course? That's an interesting question.
No, you don't have to know the entire Mahabharata. Nobody ever does. Okay. There's a very interesting statement made by Ramanujan that no self-respecting Indian ever reads the Mahabharata from cover to cover. We listen to many stories and we keep building the whole, right? So we will curate stories and send it to you. If you have an understanding, that's great. But we've had participants who, Americans, not Indian Americans, but American, whatever, however you refer to them. And they've been able to actually come up with much more interesting insights than people who know a lot. Yeah, because when you know, you've already interpreted the story in a certain way. When people come to it fresh, they ask extremely important and very interesting questions. So I've enjoyed the whole process. There's no pre-requirement that you must know the stories, but definitely you read the stories we send you as pre-work. That's critical.
Yeah. So here's another question.
Yeah.
Does your course assume that people who are participating in the course are already engaged with doing asanas and engaged in pranayama and so on?
No, I'm not making that. It's great if you do. I'm hoping that at the end of the course, you'll understand the importance of it in any case.
Mm.
Yeah, but these cannot be pre-requirements, no?
Mm.
Like in any yogic thing, in our school, for example, we never place any pre-conditions.
Mm.
You come, you engage, you learn, you take it as far as you like to take it.
Mm.
The depth is immense, so it's your choice how far you want to go.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Okay. So please do type in any additional questions. There is a very interesting question in the Q&A box.
Yeah?
How do you avoid complacency once you have already attained Atma Jnana?
When we come to Atma Jnana, we'll find out, yeah. Yeah. Most of us are on the path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
It
right.
took most people forget that by the time the Mahabharata war started, many of these were very old people, yeah.
Mm.
Bhishma was 108 or 110 or something. There is one place where Arjuna talks about who he is and says, I did this at this time, at this time. If you count it, he's about 84 years old when he fought the Mahabharata war.
Really?
And these are people who have already done something. If you take the karma thing and then they reborn. So one doesn't know. Maybe, yeah, you just spontaneously get it like some people do. It might take a long time. How does it matter? The question in yoga is, are you on the path?
Right.
That's all.
Yeah. So in the course, do you actually teach any pranayama exercises or yoga, etc., or is it primarily?
I do just a little bit. I do a little bit to get people started, but we're not specifically teaching asana and pranayama. Somebody had asked something about Sanskrit. No, you don't have to know Sanskrit. You just have to be willing to reflect and share. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a psychological self-exploration using the Mahabharata as a mirror in which we look at ourselves through the mirror of the Mahabharata.
Absolutely.
So, would a 12-year-old, young person benefit from the course? I mean, that's a
Oh, it'll be lovely if they come in, because young people usually bring in such a fresh idea, except that if it was the kind of program I do, which, face to face, which has a lot of drama and dance, it'd be very easy for young people to participate. But over the Zoom discussion, it depends on the stamina of the person to be with a dialoguing process. Yeah, if it was, the face-to-face thing we do, I would say, please come, yeah. We've had people 14, 16 coming in, and what a fresh idea they bring in. The questions they come up with are always brilliant.
Right.
So I'd be quite happy. Yeah. Arun, yeah, sure, Arun. Why don't you share? Yeah, if you can be brought onto the screen. Arun Narayan saying if he can share his perspective, Kalyan.
Yeah, I mean, Ankur is bringing him.
Yeah, great.
There's another question by Kent Dawson. Okay, do you find that an American? You can take that question after Arun's sharing.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, Arun. Hi, nice to see you.
We can't see you though.
I don't know what the camera. I'm sorry about the camera part. I don't know what's happening.
I would have to promote him to panelist and get him up. Should I do that? That will take another little second.
Yeah. Okay, but go ahead, Arun. Just share.
Yeah,
your
go
story.
ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, guys.
Hi.
I took this course in its earlier avatar in 2020. There were 2 courses with this, and I took them, and they were just beautiful. I would say, I wouldn't say even it's a course. I would use it as a workshop. I say workshop because it introduces us to the reflective process that both Kalyan and Raghuji were talking about. I found it paradigm shifting and cathartic. So normally what we do is, as a commoner, we put Yudhishthira, Duryodhana in the court, and then we dissect them and point out their mistakes. So this was different. For me, I was placing myself in the court, but the funny thing was, I'm the judge, I'm the jury, and I'm the 2 advocates, right? So this is the reflective process. So there is nobody else to judge me, but I'm going to be the person who is reflecting. I'm not even judging myself, I'm more reflecting myself. And Mahabharata becomes a tool to judge, right? I mean, we can judge ourselves in so many ways or we reflect, but what Raghu will do is he'll offer the tools, right? Hey, these are the tools. These are the, like Kalyan and Raghu are talking about the archetypes, right? They will say, hey, these are the tools. You pick the tool and you analyze, you reflect. You take the next tool, Duryodhana becomes another tool, Yudhishthira becomes a tool, Bhishma becomes a tool. So we kept introspecting, right? This is a beautiful, and the other thing is, one more point that I want to say is, sometimes we have so many problems, right? Problems at work, problems with spouse, family, friends. So it's not always as big as Kalyan's running a university problem. Sometimes it's really, really small ones. And we are very ill-equipped to handle some of the small ones too. So this reflection also will help in even in that level. It's not just at a very high level. And to be honest, I've taken courses at HUA for the last 5 years, and these 2 are one of the best courses that I've done. And I don't even know if anyone else does this outside HUA, to be honest, other than probably somebody doing it in India. So that's all I wanted to share. This is a great course, and
I'm doing it in India.
yeah,
And
yeah,
some
you are
of
doing
my
it.
friends, yeah,
That's
some
what
of
I
my
meant.
friends and people who studied with me, yeah.
And it's a
It's
pretty easy course.
unfortunate, yeah, because
Can be
Krishnamacharya taught this, but unfortunately, we need more people to learn this and do this.
I would encourage everybody to do it. It's once in a lifetime experience.
Great. So,
Thanks.
Arun, thank you so much for that
Thanks a lot,
spontaneous.
Arun.
Yeah. Raghuji, can you take Ken Dawson's question?
Sure. What's the question?
Is, do you find that an American who has not been raised on the texts, if they comes to the class with a new, fresh view, do they get a proper understanding? I mean, I think he's saying, do they get a proper understanding? What are the difficulties?
I think they do. I think they do. Yeah. I mean, I remember at least a half a dozen people who come for these courses, and I enjoy it personally because most people, Americans whom I've seen coming in, bring in a very fresh perspective and an irreverent perspective, which is very important when you're questioning and learning. Nah? And sometimes I've got into trouble because I don't hold Bhishma, for example, with great respect. And I find Indians who hold Bhishma with great respect getting very angry with me rather than be with me in the exploration. So it helps. I would say it helps if you can come in with a fresh mind.
Yeah.
It's not an issue at all. Yeah. I personally welcome it.
Yeah. I mean, what you're pointing to is the challenge of getting caught up in the story for its own sake, rather than developing the ability to see the story in oneself, in one's own psyche, in one's own character, and so on. There is an interesting question from an anonymous attendee. I usually encourage people to share their names, but this person is saying, I'm interested in the course, but however, I generally avoid engaging and sharing my personal experiences. due to an introverted attitude, but I would want to overcome it. How much work and what kind of effort do I need to put in to learn from you fully, because I get distracted into other things in my life?
No, just come for the program and test it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do our best to help you. You do your best to learn, and something will come out of it.
Yeah, right. There is no
No
particular prerequisite
guarantees,
for that.
no guarantees, but usually it works.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give a Modi guarantee out here. I'll keep it open.
Yeah. Okay, Anuji is asking, what is the other course? There was a follow-on course that Raguji offered a long time ago. It's called Antaranka Mandapam. But I don't think we're offering that anymore.
No, we're not offering that. We're offering something on the Yoga Sutra next semester.
Yeah. So I think that is it. So, has everybody answered the poll, please? It'd be very important for us. Ankur, can you show the results of the poll?
So far, 34 out of the 50 people have filled out the poll. I have 2 hands raised, Mani and Priya. Priyaji was making a lot of comments. I think Priyaji has also taken the course before.
Yeah, she has.
Yeah, Priya has taken.
Pretty great. Should I give? I'm going to give her the opportunity to speak.
Okay, and then we'll close after that. Okay, we are going above the time limit significantly. Share the results of the poll, as in show the results if you can. Okay.
Hello.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Priya.
Hi, Priya.
Can you hear me? Hello, sir. Hello, Namaskarams, Raghuvanna. Namaskarams, Kalyanji and Ankurji.
Yeah.
I want to thank Raghuvanna for conducting this invaluable and priceless course for us. I was a student of Raghuvanna between 39 and 43 years ago at J. Krishnamurti School, the school in Madras, India. And I was very, very lucky to learn Ashtanga Yoga from Raghuvanna. At the time, he was a very young man, and he has not changed in physical appearance whatsoever, but the same cannot be said for me. The course, I want to just say a couple of words about the course. The most amazing thing that I experienced was this beautiful and beatific sense of peace when I attended the class. And that sense of peace came from a deep core resonance with the truth that the class was imparting to me, that the instructor Raghuvanna was imparting.
Not
So
just
it was
me, everybody.
And the
All of
participants.
you contributed, Priya. Not
And
just me. You contributed.
Participants too, Raghuvanna, but the framework for the discussion and the stories that you shared, there was such a tremendous sense of peace and such a relief from the the ongoing sort of this piranha bites of daily life, as you can imagine. It was such a tremendous feeling of peace and a feeling of rightness that, oh my God, this is what I need to hear. This is where I belong. This is the process. This is exactly perfect for the quietening of the inner, inside whatever torment. The second thing was I have taken on some very sort of nobody has asked me to do this, but I have been in a position because they took things from me. I have been in a position where I've had to deal with some very dark and powerful forces in this world. And in the past, I would attack them and say, how can you do this? This is wrong. This is adharmic. This is totally unacceptable under any circumstance. But after attending this course, I have understood that, and I still acknowledge the truth of their adharma, and I stand up to that, and I say, this is not okay. Killing innocent people is not okay under any circumstances. But I've learned to work around what their compulsions are for being the way they are, in their lack of awareness or whatever level they're at, in a non-violent way. And these are the blessings, tangible long-term blessings of attending this course. Thank you very much.
Really nice to hear, Priya.
Okay, great. So I think we're at the end of this webinar at this time. Okay. Ankur, the results are there are about 10 people who are interested in registering. I would say please register immediately. Okay, the course is beginning very soon, right? When is the course beginning?
Next week.
Next week. So please register immediately. There are a couple of people who are interested in the MA and the Doctor of Hindu Studies program. Great. So I would like to conclude today's webinar by saying thank you all for joining. Thank you for participating. Raguji, thank you for the webinar. Apologies for the rough start at the beginning where we got really confused about where exactly you were.
Also time,
Yeah,
Kalyan, for some
Yeah.
reason,
yeah,
we got two sets of information with slightly
Right.
different times. So
yeah.
it all
I
got
understand.
very confusing at our end.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Great, everybody. Thank you. And then
Thank
those of you
you.
who want
Thank
to
you very
write to me,
much.
if anybody wants to reach out to me, you can always write to me at info@hua.edu and I'll get it. Okay. Somebody will forward it to me. So with that, namaste. Thank you all and see you sometime
Thank
soon.
you. Thank
Namaskar.
you.
Bye-bye.
Namaskaram.